Check one, two. Hello. Oh, good morning. Just a quick announcement here in the ballroom 2 and 3. Patty Heidi, the minister, just connected live, and it's in the Viking room. There's not a live feed available here, so this will be delayed about 10 minutes for the start of this particular session. All right. Come on. Gotta wait for them to turn the mic on. Hello. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next session here. So this is a plenary session for everyone. It is titled Introduction and Reintroduction to CMHC Programs for Indigenous Communities. And we have Brian Petrie who will be presenting. Brian is a specialist with Indigenous and Northern Housing Solutions with CMHC. His experience includes working for a First Nation as an infrastructure development and housing manager, working for an engineering consulting company, managing environmental remediation projects, and working as a fisheries biologist in Alaska. Brian has a master's in environmental science and is registered both as a certified engineering technologist and project management professional. Brian enjoys coming up with housing solutions for First Nations and making funding accessible. So let's give our time to Brian Petrie.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to this presentation. I'm really excited about it. Oh, perfect. So I'm just going to make sure my clicker works. Perfect. Okay. Again, thank you everyone for coming out. Hello, bonjour. I know on the program it shows 2 people presenting from CMHC, but unfortunately Lisa couldn't make it, so you're stuck with me. But I hope it goes well, and I look forward to answering questions at the end. So CMHC funding programs overview, October 27, presented by myself, Brian Petrie. So I'm going to go through an overview of CMHC funding programs. I'll start with an overview about CMHC's Indigenous and Northern Housing Solutions, who I work with, or sorry, the department I work for. Skills enhancements, I'll go through housing internship, and Indigenous youth, and on-the-job training, on-reserve funding programs such as Section 95 and renovation programs, and national housing strategy initiatives such as seed and preservation funding, co-investment fund, rapid housing initiative, Indigenous shelter for transitional housing, and then there'll be a brief or question and answers. So a little bit about CMHC's Indigenous and Northern Housing Solutions. What we do, we support Indigenous clients with their affordable housing projects across the country on and off reserve. We work with First Nation communities, tribal councils, and political territorial organizations, Métis and Inuit organizations, Indigenous nonprofit organizations, co-ops, Indigenous housing providers. Our funding programs support construction of new homes, shelters, traditional homes, major retrofit and or conversions, renovation of existing housing, capacity development through youth internship opportunities, on-the-job training, and then also specific training focused on technical and administrative. And we will work with like Indigenous communities, Indigenous organizations, tribal councils, of course, but also anybody whose client base is Indigenous is someone that we work with. So our scope is pretty wide reaching. Skills enhancement. CMHC has funding programs to help support the development of Indigenous youth wanting to work within the housing sector, mentorship, on-the-job training opportunities for those transitioning into full-time employment, and funding to complete key strategy and policy work at the community level. So this is our skills funding programs. The first one is the housing internship for Indigenous youth called HIGH. So it's work experience and on-the-job training. The youth have to be between the ages 15 and 30 years of age. It has to be related to the field of housing. It could either be, they could be helping build the home, they could be in the office doing administrative housing work. It's pretty wide reaching what they can do and what's applicable in terms of activities. All organizations are eligible to hire Indigenous youth. It can be on reserve, it can be off reserve. It can be a First Nation hiring that youth themselves. It could be a First Nation talking to a contractor and the contractor hiring that First Nation person, and then the First Nation subsidizing that wage. There's lots of different ways it can be done. There's on-the-job training, which is next level training for or projects to further advance the capacity of the organization, and there's strategic planning via skills funding. The development of policy, strategy, financial, and capital planning initiatives can be supported by CMHC. This is looked at a case-by-case basis, so it looks at what the First Nation needs, and there's a wide variety of skills and things that can be done to bolster the capacity of the First Nation. Okay, on reserve nonprofit Section 95 housing. This is a program for First Nation communities to provide affordable rental housing on reserve. First Nations borrow funds for the construction, acquisition, rehabilitation, or conversion of housing on reserve. First Nations and CMHC sign operating agreement with a 15 to 25 years amortization agreement. CMHC provide monthly subsidies, and First Nations are the owner and responsible for the day-to-day maintenance operations of the home. So a First Nation would apply for Section 95. They get the funding for construction comes in the form of a loan. They then have the funds to pay the contractor to complete the work. Once the construction is done, that then becomes an agreement on the lifetime of it. And the nice thing about this is there's construction dollars for construction, but there's also subsidy dollars for operations. So it funds the construction and the operation of the housing stock. So Section 95 eligibility criteria. So you have to be eligible for a minister loan guarantee through ISC. There are some alternative forms of security that are being looked at. There's so there are some alternatives to an MLG, but the normal process is to go through the MLG with ISC. The First Nations account with CMHC needs to be in good standing and not suspended. I need to agree to the minimum revenue contribution. So the MRC, it can be a combination of either First Nation owned financing and or rental rent they charge to the members, or a combination of both. And the project must be completed within 2 years of the funding being awarded. So there's 2 years for construction. So on reserve renovation programs. So there's 3 major programs. The first is the Rental Rehabilitation Assistance Program, otherwise called the RAP, the Emergency Repair System, ERP, and the Home Adaptation for Seniors Independent, HASI. Okay, RAP. So there's 2 kinds of RAP. There's regular RAP, there's also RAP D for persons with disability. So the funding per unit, subject to availability, is $60,000 for road accessible First Nations and $75,000 for Northern Remote First Nations. So RAP to assist with the repair and improvement of existing substandard housing to bring houses to a minimum level of health and safety. RAP persons with disabilities to carry out modifications to make units accessible for persons with disabilities. And the goal is to extend the useful life of the unit initial 15 years. So they have a little bit different focus. RAP is kind of the regular renovations. I'll call them general renovations for the home. The RAP for disability is for ones that are specific for making them accessible to someone with disability, which could be ramps, grab bars, that sort of thing. And while a home is under agreement for Section 95, you can't do a RAP, but you can do a disability RAP. The reason you can't normally just do a regular RAP is because they have, oh, there we go. There's maintenance dollars worked into the subsidy with the Section 95, which covers the regular maintenance. However, the disabilities RAP is there to, can be used when the home's under agreement with Section 95. So here's a little bit of the eligibility criteria between regular RAP and D RAP. So regular RAP property must be located on reserve. Units must be at least 5 years old. Total household income must be at or below the income threshold established by CMHC. So that one's just, it's usually, the income for the unit is 80,000. So it's usually not an issue. Just want to make sure that the money is going to the individuals who need it the most. It can't be an active Section 95 project. And the home in need of major repairs, at least one of the following qualifying areas: structural, electrical, heating, plumbing, fire safety, and overcrowding. There's, in terms of overcrowding, what that means, there's criteria for it that I can share later if people are curious. RAP B, persons with disabilities. Property must be located on reserve. Unit must be at least 5 years old. Total household income must be at or below the income threshold. House in need of repair must meet the minimum health and safety, and required repairs must make the house accessible for persons with disability. And the house, if you're going to do a RAP D, if there's other structural things like the roof or the plumbing, you need to address that as well, usually through a regular RAP. So ERP, Emergency Repair Program. So the funding per unit is up to 30,000 for road accessible First Nations and up to 37,500 for remote First Nations. The purpose is to provide financial assistance to help households with emergency repairs that are urgently required to make a house safe for continued occupancy. Eligible criteria is property must be located on reserve. Unit must be at least 5 years old. Total household income must be at or below the income threshold, and only requires urgently required to make the house safe. Examples are heating systems, chimneys, doors, windows, foundation and roofs, walls, floors, ceiling, vents, plumbing, electrical. And as long as the First Nation can make the case that it's an emergency, it has to be done right away for the safety of the occupant, it can qualify as an ERP. HACI, home adaptations for seniors independence. So the funding per unit, it's up to 20,000 for road accessible First Nations and 25,000 for remote. Purpose is to help provide financial assistance to help households with emergency repairs that are urgently required to make the house safe for continued occupancy. This is to allow elders to stay in their home. So if they need to make modifications so they don't have to move out of their home, whatever those may be, that's what you can do with this one. So eligibility criteria: property must be located on reserve. Total income must be at or below the income threshold. And the occupant must be at least 55 years of age or older, having difficulty with daily activities. So now the National Housing Strategy Program. So these are the newer ones. So we'll go through seed and preservation funding, co-investment fund, For new and repair streams, the Rapid Housing Initiative, and Indigenous Shelter and Traditional Housing Initiative. So here's an overview of SEED. So it comes as a non-repayable contribution and/or interest-free loans. So there's a contribution of up to 150,000 and/or an interest-free loan up to 350,000, depending on how much money the First Nation requires. There's a preservation stream of up to 50K per community housing project, and a contribution up to 75,000 in some cases. So SEED is very cool in that it takes care of all the pre-construction activities, which would include things like preliminary designs, energy audits, viability studies, appraisals, environmentals studies, hazardous material reports. In terms of preservation funding, it could be a building condition assessment, energy audit, accessible design review, planning for capital replacement, and analysis of operational viability. And this can be used, it can be used on reserve, it can be used off reserve, it can be used, primarily it's used with other national housing strategy programs, but for example, RHI-3 is coming out soon, which I'll get to. This can be used for planning for RHI-3, for example, if the First Nation wanted to. National Housing Co-Investment Fund. So this is a loan first program with an opportunity for a smaller capital contribution. It provides low interest loans for up to 20 years to support viability and long-term affordability projects. Capital contributions may be available for projects where loans are not a viable option. And that may not sound great at first, but those loans are at a better interest rate than you can get at a bank. So there still is a cost savings to the First Nation by taking the loan through CMHC. So here are some of the requirements for National Co-Investment Fund. It has to be a partnership. Other partners are required to contribute to the project. In addition, projects must have a form of investment from another level of government. Affordability, 30% of the units must have rents at less than 80% of median market housing rents for a minimum of 20 years. Energy efficiency. For repair renewal projects, at least 25% reduction of energy use and greenhouse gas emissions relative to past performance must be achieved. And for new construction, at least a 25% reduction in energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions over national building energy codes must be achieved. Accessibility for repair renewal projects, 20% of the units must be accessibility standards and projects must be barrier-free in common areas. For new construction, 20% of units must meet accessibility standards and projects must be barrier-free or have a full universal design. RHI, and I know this has been very popular with the first two iterations of the program, with RHI 1, RHI 2, and RHI 3 is coming very soon. On August 30th, 2022, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Minister Ahmed Hussein announced a total of $1.5 billion over 2 years, starting in 22-23, to extend the Rapid Housing Initiative. This new funding is expected to create up to 45,000 new affordable housing units, with at least 25% funding going towards women-focused housing projects. Now, they haven't released a lot of details on how this will be set up this go-around. I know last go-arounds, it was very attractive because it's very administratively for the First Nation is very light. They applied, they got the funding up front, all of it, and they could then do their project. So we're really looking forward to see what's going to be going on with RHI 3. Indigenous shelter and traditional housing. So the three kind of major points of this is Indigenous-led. Indigenous organizations and governments across Canada are eligible to apply. Intake 2 closed in September, and we're waiting for intake 3 to open. So it will be available coming again. So capital, CMHC will allocate 420 million over 5 years for the construction of the new shelters and transitional housing. And operating ISC will invest 304 million to support the new shelters operation cost. This is a very cool program in terms of the partnership between CMHC and ISC. CMHC pays for the construction and ISC pays to support the operational costs, which makes these very much more viable for a lot of communities. So key takeaways from this. So I gave an overview of CMHC funding programs. Please contact your local CMHC INA specialist to discuss potential opportunities, and we strive for the same goals. All First Nations deserve safe, affordable, appropriate housing for their members. And that's my contact information. You're free to contact me if you have any questions. Now, I apologize. I know the audio went out for a bit during my presentation. I'm happy to take questions. I'm happy to go back to look at previous slides if someone had a question, if they didn't hear something. So I'll open up for questions. Does someone have a microphone? Okay.
Our First Nation has applied for that rapid housing and we were declined twice. Why is that? What do you need?
So, sorry, I can't. Is the mic turned on?
Our First Nation has applied for that rapid housing and we've been denied twice already. What do you need to do in order to get approved for it?
Which First Nation are you from?
Lac Seul First Nation?
Okay. I don't. The answer is I don't know. I didn't see your application. Who's your specialist?
David Gordon.
Okay. I'm happy to give you my card, and I'm happy to follow up with you and look at what happened. I know there's a lot of requests for it, but unfortunately, I wasn't at CMHC at the time when that came out. But I'm happy to look into it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I guess Ashita. Ashita will be your specialist. I can give you my card, and then I'm happy to, if you want to email me, I'm happy to get you in contact with her.
My name is David. I'm from Sandy Lake. I'm gonna, can an individual apply for this? Not like as a community, but an individual?
No, it's communities that apply for programs. Were you thinking of a program in particular?
Like for one person to try to get a house to help himself, and the band will help build it. It's to get the material in, and that person will be able to pay for it if he can or she can.
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss that with you. There is a program through CMHC called Section 10, which is an exception to that, where CMHC will work with individuals, and basically they work with the band. The band backs them, and I believe they get an MLG through the band as well. But again, I'll walk over and give both of you my cards, and I'll be happy to talk to you about that. You know.
Hi. I want to go back to that the rapid housing initiative.
Okay.
We've also applied 2 times and we didn't get anything. Who decides and what's the criteria to get the rapid housing initiative?
There's a team at CMHC called Financial Solutions. They're the one who evaluate applications. As well, there's a team that we put together specifically for rapid housing. The eligibility criteria would have been put out when both streams were put out for 1 and 2. So it would have had to depend on your individual application on how it met that criteria. With RHI 3, there'll be criteria again that we published when it comes out.
So when the proposals come out again, do you give these people that didn't get the rapid housing initiative from 1 and 2, is the chances a little bit better than before? Or is it the same criteria?
I'm sorry, I don't know. They haven't announced it yet. They haven't announced how they're going to prioritize the program. But when it, so I don't know yet.
Hello? Oh, hi. So I don't have a question. I just have a comment. So one of the success stories from yesterday, she mentioned that she spoke to the specialist for, because she was successful with the RHI, but she applied twice. And the second time she applied, the specialist told her what she needed to change to get more points to be eligible. So I was just thinking maybe talk to your specialist and they'll be able to guide you in the right direction.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah, yeah. Please contact. Who know who your specialist is? Ashita. Yeah, talk to Ashita. I'm sure she can tell you about, in terms of RHI 1 and RHI 2, like why you weren't unfortunately successful. I'd say contact her. But again, when RHI 3 comes out and they give us information, then we'll have more information on that too.
Good day, Scott McPherson, Kuching First Nation. Okay, touching on that rapid housing, phase 1, phase 2. Also, we put in for both of those. Talked to the specialist for both occasions. Nothing for my community on those. So talking to a specialist didn't do shit for me or my community. Pardon my language here, but it's just straightforward. We didn't get it. I'm not looking forward to phase 3 going through all this, with the lack of better terms, crap again, just to get built up and get shot down yet again. So I'm thinking just move forward and go with stick builds if we can. But I also have a question pertaining to the shelter homes. Shelter homes, will they have to be in part of the criteria manned by professionals to help individuals? And do we have to put that in with our application on who has the qualifications and certifications to do said job at these transition homes or shelter homes? And if that's the case, how do we pertain that information without Privacy Acts?
Okay, thank you. And I'll answer your question, but I just want to address what you said first. I'm sorry you weren't successful. I know a lot of First Nations in this room were successful with RHI 1 and maybe RHI 2 as well. I'm sorry that yours was not. Again, I'd say please talk to your specialist, and I'm sorry that didn't work out. Who is your specialist, if you don't mind me asking?
Hello. Okay, first time was Dave Morella. And
Okay.
then my second go round is Wilmer McLean. And
Okay.
he did try to help me, but like I said, it went through whatever process it had to go through and nothing. And we put more information in our second one than we did our first one.
Okay. Well, again, I'm sorry to hear that, but yeah, but a lot of First Nations were successful, and I'm sorry to hear that you weren't. And so in terms of your second question about shelter and transitional housing initiative, so in terms of that, you need to provide stuff like the facility design, the program planning, like what services to be offered, what the staffing plan is. I'm not sure if you need to provide resumes of the actual staff who will be at the facility, but I'm welcome to follow up for you with that.
Operating budget, confidentiality policy. So I've been working on this for a month now, and I haven't gotten to the point of having Aisha look it over. So it's quite detailed.
Yeah, sorry, he's trying to hand you the microphone. Yeah,
I would say we're putting in a application for a transition house right now, and it is extremely detailed.
Mhm.
You know, between job descriptions, policies, confidentiality forms, budgets, financial statements, drawings, cost estimates. You pretty much have to hire somebody to help you do all of this to get your application in.
I've seen that from quite a few First Nations where they've hired somebody. But yeah, it's quite it's quite a large application. But the amount of funding available is also quite large. for
Yeah,
it.
so my recommendation is to just keep talking to your funding rep and just keep asking them questions because it's based on a point system. And I don't think a lot of people understand that is you've got to get so many points to before they even consider approving it.
Yeah, like the shelter initiative and RHI, and a lot of the other programs, unfortunately, they are competitive because there's only so much funding available. And in terms of funding decision, it depends on, not just your applications, but the other ones that are received at the same time. Any other questions?
Hello, I'm from Bearskin Lake First Nation. If I may just make a comment on that RHI program. Bearskin was successful in getting a lot of units, I'll say. And what we have to do is you have to work with your agent there. Our contact was Ashida, and we kept after her almost on a daily basis to get our points up as well. But we need to do the changes, and we were very successful on our second round. So there's still hope, I believe, with this program. Is to me now, I'd say that program is very good to us. We managed to get 30 units this year. Thank you so much.
Just one quick question regarding emergency funding. Does that go towards fires in a house?
If there's an emergency fire risk, it could. Are you thinking like an improperly installed wood stove, or what would?
Just wondering, is there funding towards that when it's a CMHC Section 95 house?
There's, I'll give you my card. I can follow up with you. It depends on what the actual conditions are. If is the house currently under Section 95 agreement?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, then if you have to do modifications to the house for safety, there's the replacement reserve that could be accessed.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you can use ERP before the replacement reserve. I don't think so. I think you have to use the replacement reserve first. And that if there's fire issues within the community, there's fire funding program through ISC.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, thank you very much for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know these can be very dry. So thank you very much.
Thanks to Brian for his presentation. Here's a token of our appreciation. Thank you. All right, thanks. As part of the, we're gonna have a spot prize. I have a dash cam, 2 dash cams, it looks like, or something, some kind of set. So under a seat in here is a Post-it with the date on. So if you're sitting in a seat or it might be an empty seat beside you, there will be a white Post-it with green on top. It says save the date. Oh, we have a prize. We have a winner here in the middle. Want to come up and grab the... Nice. Okay, so next is our lunch period. So we'll be having lunch served. It's probably out there already, and we're starting our agenda back up at 1 o'clock, back in the breakout session room. So enjoy your lunch.